So, hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining the session today, Power Teams, the ultimate guide to adaptive cards in Teams. We're really excited to be speaking at this event this morning. Before I start, a big thank you to our sponsors. Without our sponsors, obviously, we wouldn't be able to do these types of events, and you can see their logos on the screen now. So just a bit of introduction to myself before we kick off with the session. So my name is Kat Greenan, and I'm a Microsoft Solutions Specialist and a Microsoft Gold Partner based in the UK. I specialise in Microsoft Teams, and I frequently speak at conferences all around the world on Microsoft Teams. And I am a co-host of a podcast called Cloud Conversations. You'll also see on my screen I have my blog, collabwithcat.com, which specialises in Teams tips and tricks. I'm on LinkedIn, so please search for my name. I'm also on Twitter at GreenanCat. You can see my handle there as well. So what we're going to cover today is adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams. So first of all, what are adaptive cards? What are they used for and why? What are the benefits of using them? How do we actually build them in Microsoft 365? And I also want to give you a live demonstration of that as well. So what we'll run through is how to build them, and what they look like from an end user perspective as well, using different elements of Microsoft 365. So let's begin. What are adaptive cards? So adaptive cards are essentially a new cross-product specification for cards in Microsoft products. And that includes bots, Cortana, Outlook, and Windows, not just Microsoft Teams. And the adaptive cards are really recommended for sharing information, gathering information from your teams in a formal, structured way. So you can see some examples on my screen now. Adaptive cards is using Power Automate to automatically or manually share cards into either Teams chat or channel messages, Outlook, and more. So we can use these adaptive cards in more than just Microsoft Teams, but that's going to be the focus for today. Now, just to run through some of these cards, the first one on the left-hand side is a really simple card that just shows a piece of news and a couple of buttons that go to an external website. You can see my click to view button that will take me to the location in SharePoint where this news article lives. So it gives the user information and the option to go somewhere else for the information. So it's a very simple card. The one in the middle is tasks. So you can distribute tasks and give users options to add notes, any different kinds of actions. They can complete the task directly from that card within Microsoft Teams. And on the right-hand side that you can see, we have input forms. So input forms are a way to gather information from a user directly from the card. So you can create input forms to gather feedback, process new employee information. You can really decide as well where that information is stored. For example, when an employee fills out this information, where does that info go? It can go to a SharePoint list. It could go to an Excel spreadsheet, and you can even have another team notified when someone completes a response. Now you can embed cards in Cortana and Outlook as well as Microsoft Teams. So that's what adaptive cards are. Now, what are they used for? Now, there's lots of different use cases for adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams, and you could use adaptive cards, as I mentioned, to push out news or information to a team. It shares the information in a formatted professional way, and it keeps employees up to date. And a really good example of that being used is we had an organization that we were working with who had a SharePoint intranet with news posts. Brand new intranet, everybody was using Microsoft Teams as well. And what they found was that people just weren't reading the information. They were not taking in any of the news articles because they were spending all day in Teams working. They didn't really go back to check the intranet. So what they did was set up a adaptive card using Power Automate, which essentially will push news from SharePoint through an adaptive card directly into Microsoft Teams, which just increased their read rate, especially if you're putting news like security and compliance and so on, really important pieces of news about the organization. The other one in the middle there, approvals, document approvals. So approvals are another way to use adaptive cards. And you can move, for example, if you have really long-winded approval processes that require a lot of emailing back and forth, change that into a quick and easy adaptive card in Teams. You can create approvals for documents, messages, and just about anything, any other approval process that you can think of. And not only that, but it will actually completely automate the process, which improves time to decision making. Adaptive Cards also integrates with Dynamics 365. So you can see the other use case in there is case management. It can be used for case management, lead generation, and follow-up. So when a new case is created in CRM Dynamics, we can actually set an adaptive card to automatically post to a team with that case information. We could do that with accounts, new leads. We could use adaptive cards to share that information with the team, so they could see when a new lead is generated, when they've been assigned a new account, and so on. So we're automating that process and putting everything in one place in a nice, easy adaptive card. And finally, collecting information. So we can put or we can use input forms to create a form that users will fill out, and that will also be it could be information that is sent to Dynamics 365. So if they're creating a new lead, they could do that from an adaptive card in Teams, fill out the information, send it, and that will be automatically creating a new account in Dynamics. So we're totally automating any kind of admin process. And that's just some examples of why you would want to use adaptive cards in your organization. So it's a really a easy way to automate things in a formatted professional way. The benefits, there are lots of great benefits. The first one is reusability. So when you create an adaptive card once, you can reuse it across different platforms. You also get a really great look and feel with adaptive cards. So sharing information to teams through Power Automate, it can become really basic with just some text. But with adaptive cards, you can share images, videos, links, and make it interactive. And you can achieve that with low to no code. Speaking of code, it is a low-code solution. You do not have to be a developer to create adaptive cards. Although there is some code used, most of it is in pre-built templates, so you don't have to spend the money upskilling your employees to be able to build adaptive cards. I myself create adaptive cards, and I'm by no means a developer. So how do we build adaptive cards? Well, there are a couple of ways to do it. The first one is using documentation from Microsoft. There are huge amounts of resources available to help you build adaptive cards in Microsoft 365. And if I can just quickly show you an example of some of that documentation. So on my screen, let me zoom in slightly. You can see that I have a adaptive cards website here. And essentially what I can do is choose samples and templates, and Microsoft are actually going to generate this code for me. And what I do with this code is I paste it into Power Automate, and I will show you how to do that. And then it will create my adaptive card. And I can see a sample of the adaptive card on the right-hand side. And on the left, you'll see a list of all the different types of adaptive cards we can use. So if I was to click on agenda, for example, you'll see on the right-hand side, I now have an adaptive card with an agenda with information in it, and I have the code underneath. So you could be a little bit creative with it. If we do a food order in here with validation, so we can have drop downs on the right-hand side, images, we have flight details, expense reports even, and it's just a much easier way for a user to be able to interact with and share information, putting this type of adaptive card into Teams. Now, again, we have approve, reject, and all of this code is put in here for me. So it changes every time I click on a new adaptive card template. So it's pre-built. You don't have to write this from scratch, which is very handy if you're not used to doing code like I am. So we could use documentation from Microsoft. We can also use an online designer. This is actually my favorite way to create adaptive cards. So there's a free online designer, which I'll just get up now for you, which is adaptivecards.io/designer. And in here, what we can see is I have an adaptive card. Oh, let me see if I can just get rid of that little warning sign. No, that's fine. So I have my adaptive card at the top, and you can see, you know, I have a title in here, I've got a username, and I've got some information. On the left-hand side, I can drag and drop elements to customize the card. So in here, you can see I've got containers. So I might want to add a table or an image set. I have elements. So if I want to add another text block, or, you know, I want to add an action, I can go ahead and add an action in here. And you can see when I click to add an action, I could choose submit, which will allow a user to submit information, open URL, which will open a link to another website, and you can choose what that website is. So I can totally customize my card, and I can do it in here. Let me just, scroll down. And I can do it directly from here, and I can see what the card's going to look like. I can input date, time, number, text. You know, this is where I'm asking the user to fill in information. And I can move this around. I can delete elements quite easily. And every time that I delete something, you'll see in the bottom, the code changes. So this is the code that I'm going to copy and paste into Power Automate and use my adaptive card. So if you want to use the sample, that's great. They're pre-built for you. If you want to be a little bit more creative, create your own elements and your own adaptive card, you certainly can, and you can do that from the adaptive card designer. I'll come on to back onto this in a second to show you some of the detail, but let's just go back to my slide for now. The third option is to use something like Visual Studio, which gives you a lot more capability in terms of customizing your card. So if you have a Visual Studio subscription, then you can certainly use that to create and change adaptive cards. As I said, my preference is definitely the free online designer, which doesn't require any skills necessarily, and also doesn't come at a subscription cost. Okay, so let's take a quick look at a live demonstration then of the adaptive cards. So I'm going to use the examples that I talked through. The first one I'm going to show you is the news. So posting news from SharePoint into Teams, so a user can consume that knowledge and click on the button and it will take them to that news article. So let's look at it from an end user perspective, and then I will come on to how I did it. So I am in SharePoint online. I'm in my intranet. It's called the landing. You'll see I've got some news articles here. Now, for the purpose of this demonstration, I am going to manually trigger an adaptive card. You can automate it. So essentially what that means is if somebody creates a new news article, it will automatically send that directly into the team with an adaptive card. So you don't have to do anything. It will just do it by itself. Whenever someone adds news, that's your trigger. But for this purpose, I am going to manually start it. So I'm going to click on the settings and I'm going to go to site contents. I'm going to go over to my site pages. And this is going to give me a list of all my news articles in here. So I'm going to use this taking flight news article. I'm going to select it. And to manually trigger this, I'm going to click on the three dots. Let me just click on this three dots, choose automate, and you'll see I've got a Power Automate workflow that's been created here, hashtag Power Teams. So I'm going to click on that. And I've chosen to require a message. So I could say, check out this news, and I'm going to run that flow. And what that looks like within Microsoft Teams is if I just go to Teams now, and you'll see the design channel in my Mark project team is in bold. That shows me that there's a new message, and you'll see the adaptive card is here. So it's 9:51. So I don't know, and you're an hour forward, wherever you're based. So it'll be 10:51. But we can see here, I've got the information, I've got the title of the news article, I've got the blurb of the news article, and I could choose to click to view that news article as well. So in Teams, if I see this, I think, oh, I want to have a look at this. I'll click to view, and it will take me to that news article. And you can see it's just taking me straight there. So I can add comments, read the news, and interact with it. So that's one example of an adaptive card. That's the sending news directly to the team. Now, in terms of how I created that, in Power Automate in Office 365, you'll see I have a list of my flows on the left, and in my flows, you'll see a list of the workflows that you have created. The one that I've created for the news article is actually this one, Power Teams, post a message to Teams for a selected file. I'm going to edit this just so we can see the workflow. So in here, I can see for a selected file. So this is my, my trigger. I selected the file and I created the workflow. But again, this trigger would be when a file is added or when a news article is added or a page is added to a certain SharePoint site. I've got my site address and my library of the location where I want to start this trigger. Really important to get file properties. This allows me to add dynamic content into my adaptive card. So what that means is I can add, my content so it will create an adaptive card for different news articles, and it will take me to a different news article location, not just this one that I am working from. And the action in here is post an adaptive card in a chat or channel. So when I click on that, you will see I have the option to post as a user, or in this case, I've just chosen, Flowbot. I'm going to choose to post it in a channel, but you can choose a chat message or a group chat. I've chosen the team and the channel, and underneath you will see I have my adaptive card. Now this is going to be blank when you first kind of create your adaptive card, and I copy and pasted this from the adaptive card designer. So I will see in here, let me open up the designer, so I can see in here, I could add my text block, my image, and I've got my, let me actually just go to a different one, let me make it easier. Yeah, that's better. So in here, I've got my adaptive card, I can copy and paste that. And in my adaptive card, I've got a title, an action button, the user who posted the news. And I could go ahead and I could just copy all of that and then paste that into this location here. There is something to note. You'll see I've got dynamic content. I've got a title, so it will pick up the title of the news article, whichever title it may be. I've got created by, it will pick up the user. If I scroll down, I can see a description. It will pick up a description of the news article. When I scroll down, it will have the link to the item that we're choosing to create this news article or to create this adaptive card for. So this is important. And one of the questions I get asked is, how do you know where to put your dynamic content? Because it's, if you're looking at this for the first time, this can be quite confusing. So there's a trick that I do to make it easier. In the adaptive card designer, where it says, we have a title in here, text block title. What I could actually do is when I, if I want to make it easier for me to see where that title is, I could do star, title goes here, star. So when I look at the code, you can see the text, the big title goes here. It's notifying me, okay, that's where I put my dynamic content. And you can do that for every element. You could do that for, the username goes here. And it will just kind of point out where the username will go. You can see here, username goes here. So that is where my dynamic content needs to go. And I can do that by just changing the adaptive card, and then copy and pasting that code. So when I paste this into Power Automate, I will see a big star, description goes here. And that's where I would put my dynamic content. And you can choose the dynamic content from the file properties that we've added. So that's just a trick for you, to make it easier to create the adaptive cards. Okay, so the next one I wanted to show you is tasks. So if I just, let's leave this and not change it. So there are tasks that I can, customize within Microsoft Teams using adaptive cards. And you'll see I've got my workflow here. So post an adaptive card when a task status changes in Planner. And what I've done in here is I've actually chosen a specific plan. So I've said when a task is completed, that is the trigger. When a task is completed in this specific plan, the Market project plan, I want you to post an adaptive card into a channel. So what I'm going to do is go to Planner, and we're going to change the status of it's actually called tasks by planner now, but let's go in and change the status. The Mark 8 project plan you can see here, and I'm going to complete this task. I might remove the completed part of this task. So there's a couple of task statuses that are changing here. Once that happens, I can see my workflow, when a task is completed, I've completed that task. It's going to get the user profile, so it's going to get the information. And then the adaptive card here, you can see is I've got my dynamic content in here. It's got the title, it's got the display name, and so on. Now, to make things a little bit easier, I didn't actually have to copy any of this code into Power Automate. It was created for me. So when you create this from a template in Power Automate, it will already have this. So it makes it a little bit easier. But if I just go into my design or my Mark 8 project team, let me see where I would have put this. Let me see which. So in the Mark 8 project team, in the general channel, that is where I have put my task. If we just give this a little refresh, and it should update for me. So if you give it a second, it should pop up. But here's one that I did earlier. You can see update from planner, status has been completed. I've got the username, a bit of information, and I can click to view the task. So as a user, I can sign into planner, and I can view that task. And it's going to ask me to refresh. So hopefully now we'll be able to, of course, have to log in again. That's fine. Let's use the web app instead, and then we should, we should have the notification that pops up, which will allow me to view the task. And it doesn't have to be just view task. It could be create new task, close off task. It's a way for users to get notifications and manage tasks through Planner and Microsoft Teams. They don't have to remember to go to the Planner tab and close off their tasks and so on. So task management, very easy to do within Microsoft Teams using adaptive cards. The third option I wanted to share with you is the input form. So the input form is one that, if I just go off of these, let me show you from the workflow first. So you can see in here, I've got the Power Teams input form design channel. I'm going to click on this and edit it, and you'll be able to see my workflow that I've created. So I've chosen to manually trigger this because it's a demonstration and I want to be able to control when a form is created and put into Microsoft Teams. But the trigger could be when a new employee, is added to a team, or, you could have it every time someone adds a file, or you could get to choose your triggers depending on when you want this input form to be added. My adaptive card, if I click on that, you'll see I'm going to post it as a flowbot in a channel that I've specified. And my adaptive card content is in here. I've copy and pasted this. And what I've actually done with this one is I've had a thanks for your response update message. So when someone completes the form, I'll be able to see, thanks for your response. It'll give a little thank you message, which you can customize. Again, I can choose the team and the channel. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this now. Because I've manually triggered it, this is how I'm going to start the workflow. So now that I've done that, it will send a form. And you'll see that it's, in terms of the workflow, how it works, the trigger is completed because I've manually triggered it, but the adaptive card is in amber because it's not been completed. The reason for that is because I've chosen post adaptive card and wait for a response. So this workflow will not be completed until a user goes in and they complete that form. That's when it will go green, tick, and the workflow is completed. So let's hop over and you'll see the design channel, excuse me, is in bold because there's a new message in there. And you will see that I now have my adaptive card form. So I can see, tell us about yourself, first name, second name. You'll see there's an image popping up. It's just a little bit slow for me today. and your email address as well. So, and there's a submit button. It's a really nice kind of, easy input form that I can use. So I can do Greenan, cat, and I can type in my email address. And I can submit that. Now, when I submit that, you'll see my little thank you message should pop up. Thank you for your response, as we said. And we can also then go back to my run history, and you'll see that it's now completed. It's given me a green tick. The workflow is ran successfully because a user completed that information. The question is, where does that information go? You'll actually see the information in here. You'll see it in data. So you can see any completed forms. The data is in here, so I can see Greenan cat Greenan. It's within Power Automate. But again, I could choose to pull that data out and I could put that into a list automatically, an Excel spreadsheet, an email, whichever kind of way that you want to store that data and that information that's pulled from the form. And you could even go one step further is, when someone fills in that form, something else happens. So the data is stored in SharePoint list, and then, a team is created, or so another trigger or another action. So you can go one step further with this if you want to. But that's a kind of really easy way to get information from users using input forms and adaptive cards. And the adaptive card I actually did just copy from the adaptive card designer. If I just show you a templated one instead. So you can see if we input form is here, this is the input form, and I would just go to try it yourself, or I would copy this JSON or this code, paste that, and that will create it for me. So you don't even have to kind of do anything from scratch, which is a lot easier. There's one last thing I want to show you before we finish, and that is the approvals within adaptive cards and Microsoft Teams. So approvals in Teams can be created. Oh, the general channel. So my task has just come through now. It's taken a minute, but that task Power Automate card has now come through. I can see it there. So approvals can be started from either Power Automate. They could be started from the Approvals Hub in Microsoft Teams, which actually, if you click on the 3 dots and search for approvals, you'll see the Approvals Hub in Teams pops up. It's a free, already opened it, so let's do it here. It's a free, feature of Microsoft Teams. The only additional thing you might have to pay for is if you want to integrate Adobe Sign, you would need an Adobe subscription. But in the Approvals Hub, I have a list of all of my approvals that have happened in my organization, requested, rejected, approved, and so on. I have the ability to create a new approval request from here. And what that will actually do is it will have the card already for me, and I'll have, the name of the request. I can add who I want to approve this information. I can add custom responses. I can attach files, links to documents, and so on. So I could create an approval from the Approvals Hub. I could also do it from a team in a channel. So I should have the Approvals app in here. If I add that really quickly to my channel, you'll see again, approvals, request, I can go in, I can choose the name, attach the file, and that will send that approval directly into the channel. What I can also do is I can start an approval from SharePoint and send it into Teams. So in here, you'll see I've got a branding elements document. I actually need this document approved so we can publish it. I'm going to click on the file and I'm going to manually trigger the Power Automate workflow that I've created. Oh, it didn't like that. Request sign off. And it will pop up on the right hand side with the workflow. I'm going to choose myself so you can see what it looks like. I can see please approve. I'm going to add a little message in there. And I'm going to run that workflow. And what will happen is that approver will receive a notification in Teams to say that there's been a request to approve a file or a document. When I go into my team here, I'll be able to go either to the Approvals Hub and I'll see the request pop up. If we give it just a second, there we go. So it's popping up as a banner request. I also have it in my Actions or my activity. When I click on my activity, I'll see that I've got please approve the branding elements, the file. I can click on that file and I can see what it looks like. I can choose to approve it. I can choose more options. I can reassign it, cancel it, or I could choose to approve. Now, what I've actually set up as well is when I approve this file, the final status is approved. That person has received that notification to say, oh, great, your document was approved. But what it will also do is update the sign-off status. You can see here, this has now been updated as approved. So I can update the information back to SharePoint. So when I go into it and someone else in the marketing team sees the branding elements, they will see that has been approved for being published. So it's working, with the tools together. So the approvals using adaptive cards that are already pre-built, I can start an approval from Teams, the Hub, Channel, Chat Message even, SharePoint, and lots of other locations in Microsoft 365. But I just wanted to make you aware of those processes for especially documents that you can, automate a little bit better. And that was everything I wanted to share you without overwhelming too much, because there is obviously a lot that we could do in terms of the art of the possible. But hopefully that gives you an overview of adaptive cards, how to create them, why you might want to. And I would recommend just having a go, playing around with some adaptive cards, and then obviously thinking about some use cases in your organization where these might fit in and, make processes a little bit slicker and quicker. But that was everything I wanted to cover in today's session. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.